It's an absolute shocker from Norway. An Indian couple jailed for gross and repeated ill treatment of their child. Those who speak for the couple claim it's a case of culture clash. Norway, though, has a scary charge sheet. It lists whipping the kid with a belt and burning his tongue with a hot spoon. The charges will now be debated in a higher court. But is it not time to do some serious soul searching and reflection? Is it not time to ask whether this is less about a clash of cultures and more a case of out and out bad parenting?
The Indian couple accused of mistreating their child stand convicted by a court in the Norwegian capital of Oslo. Chandrasekhar and his wife Anupama have been sentenced to 18 and 15 years in jail on charges of child abuse. The Oslo District Court held that the Indian couple deliberately burnt their son's leg with a hot spoon that resulted in a 3.5 centimeter burn mark. The court also found that on several occasions the parents hit the child with a belt and on one occasion even threatened to burn their son's tongue with a hot spoon. According to Norwegian authorities, this abuse took place over a period of 6 to 7 months. Chandrasekhar and his wife are already in jail for threatening and using violence against their son, who had complained to his school teacher that his parents were threatening to send him back to India for his acts. The couple's family in India, however, alleged that the parents were not given a fair trial.
Really, it's a very big distracting situations for our family members. There is a chance of appealing in the next court. We are going to do that also. We are going to discuss with the lawyer, the neighbors and the witnesses who are there. They are going to discuss on it. Yeah. Find there must be some long discussion that should have been happened. More support from the government should be there. The matter is going very good at the time of Friday and Thursday. It was good, but after that, I think the support from the government is somewhat delayed. So if that support has been there, we would have a positive judgment on this verdict.
So far, India has maintained that it will not intervene in the legal process of Norway. The Ministry of External Affairs has issued a statement that says the consular office in Norway has been in touch with the couple and that it will continue to render necessary consular assistance and be in touch with their lawyer. But with the couple staring at a jail term, will the Indian government intervene now?
Why is there so many discordant notes and why do such extreme situations arise? The BJP demands that the Ministry of External Affairs take a very quick and rapid step on it. I understand it has legal implications in Norway. Notwithstanding, it's our demand that the Ministry of External Affairs please look after the welfare of Indian citizens abroad, the parents with their child.
District Court Norway has passed their verdict on the 4th of December that finds Anupama and Chandrasekhar guilty under Norwegian Penal Code 219. This means a sentence of 1 year and 6 months in prison for Chandrasekhar and 1 year and 3 months in prison for Anupama. The defense has already decided to appeal this verdict in a higher court, grounds being that there is not enough evidence to prove that they are guilty. Another ground is a humanitarian ground under which the defense is going to appeal for the couple to be let out of the prison, because this is what normally happens in Norway with Norwegian people when an appeal and a trial is going on. Lavina Tandon for Headlines Today from Norway.
Is this not a case of out and out bad parenting? Joining us on the center stage face-off, we've got Mr. Anupam Kher. He's been tweeting some very strong views on the attitude of the Indian government in this case. With us also is Dr. Sanjeev Bagai. Dr. Saroja Balan are with me in the studio. Thank you very much. Lavina Tandon is reporting from Oslo tonight. We'll go across to all of them. I want to first go across to Mr. Anupam Kher, because several people have made this an issue of nationalism. They're saying that the Indian government, Mr. Kher, has betrayed Chandrasekhar and Anupama. They should have done more. But is this not clearly a case of bad parenting? There are cigarette stubs, there are marks from a belt. This just reeks of bad parenting. This is not a clash of culture. This is a case of parents who crossed the line and they ought to be punished for what they did.
Rahul, first of all, I did not know this is the extent of behavior of the parents. I was shooting in Mysore, so I was only, whatever I could gather was that they threatened the child with telling him to go, that we'll send you back to India. So the aspect of it is that if they have actually done that, then they are in the right place, which is the jail. Because if they've actually hit the child with a belt, and if they have really burnt his tongue or burnt mark with a burnt spoon, then I think they deserve to be like that, or they deserve to sort of be in the jail. My point is that whatever the crime is happening, or whatever the fine, whenever I hear the government spokesperson say that it is their internal matter, I feel a little that they should do a little more than just say that statement and sort of get away with it. I feel it's important for them to find out and sort of give those people a feeling that yes, we are there. In case you're innocent, we may work on it. As far as getting beating up, I was talking about beating up, which I have gone through in my childhood. I'm sure the two panelists who are on this show must have also been scolded by their parents, or once in a while slapped around, things like that. So that has happened with me, which was the extent I was thinking. But if this is what they have done, then I don't know whether I want to defend the parents at all. But if you're talking about in our country, children being scolded and parents hitting them once in a while, I feel that's part of their affection, that part of their love. I do not know the technical side of how the psychological aspect of the two other panelists will be talking about, because before the show you were telling me that they are very articulate, etc. So from a point of view, I think I have made a success out of myself as a person. I mean, not talking about as a profession. To say that my mother did not slap me or my mother did not spank me will be a lie, and to say that my father never scolded me will also be a lie. I have grown up in a store. My teachers used to hit me up, but I never took it in the sense that it is taken these days. So it should not happen.
Okay.
But if it happens, it's not necessarily child abuse, or it's not necessarily parents taking law in their hand, etc.
Okay, you've laid the grounds for this debate. Now I want to go across to Sanjeev Bagai. Were you beaten up by your parents when you were growing up? Not necessarily beaten up back in blue, but reprimanded on the odd occasion, maybe with a little bit of a whack across your face. You did.
No,
but at all.
Yeah, but just to put things in a correct perspective, at a macro level, taking Anupam's point of view and the contrary point of view, I think it's important to realize that a child is a vulnerable human being. He is dependent. He is dependent physically, psychologically, emotionally, educationally, every which way. Now, there's a very fine line between discipline and punishment. And once you cross the line, then punishment is very difficult to grade as mild, moderate, severe or gross. I think any physical hitting of a child is just unethical. It is not to be tolerated. Discipline can be in other avenues apart from actually
no, but
going
Dr.
beyond
Balan, this is an argument we hear very often in India.
Yeah.
People call us up and say, you're making such a big deal of this Norway story. I'm sure your mom beat you up as well,
yeah,
and you turned out fine.
Yeah.
And they say, my mom beat me up. Mr. Kher is making that same argument. Is it really about a clash of cultures, or is it just that Indian parenting hasn't kept up with the times?
I think so, and I think that just the fact that you remember that you've been beaten by your father or your mother or your grandmother or even your sibling, that means it's left a mark on you for you to remember. And it's just the fact, just the fact that the child remembers that the father or the mother, the one whom they look up to has actually hurt them, is why they remember this. So I think there are other ways of disciplining these children. I think more importantly that you have to reason and talk to them, and when you stop this the physical part of it, then there is more work for the parent to do in the form of discipline, reasoning, and I think at the end of the day those children are going to be less violent as adults than if they were given the odd
Mr. K, the doctor making the point, the fact that you still recall after all these years that you were beaten up by your parents shows just how badly scarred you were. And therefore, that is reason why no parent should ever raise his hand. There are other ways of disciplining children. This business of calling it a clash of culture is not accepted. Mr. Kher.
No, 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 no. Rahul, I think the doctor on the panel is absolutely wrong. Absolutely. I don't usually talk about the kind of a defense manner, but she should read my book, where I have talked about the best thing about you is you. And that book could have only come because of the kind of parents I had. There is no scar. I'm absolutely healthy, and I think we should not turn it into a kind of a scientific debate, because that does not happen. I think yet in Europe or any other countries or in America, there are more old people's home than they are in India, in spite of the fact that the parents might have sort of once in a while beaten up a child.
Let me bring in Lavina Tanan, who's been tracking this case. Yes, Mr. Kher, we can hear you. Lavina, what is it that the parents are now saying? Because they were saying all this while that the government has abandoned us, that we aren't guilty. Now this charge sheet talks about very serious abuse, with a belt, with cigarette stubs. Now all of that is clearly not acceptable. What are the parents saying?
Well, I must clarify here, Rahul, that the belt mark that they have been talking about, that is what has been contested. The defense and the parents are saying that there were no belt marks. The belt marks would have been seen by the doctor who is examining the child every month. There should have been some marks. There were no belt marks. This is a child. The evidence that the prosecution has given in the court is based on two things. One, the statement given by a child who has an attention deficit disorder, who thereby the definition of the disorder exaggerates and is passive. Second, it's based on the given by a doctor who only saw a photograph of the scar and did not really examine the child. The father has accepted that he threatened the child with a hot spoon, but it by mistake hit him. He never really hit him that badly with a cigarette stub or belt. So this is exactly which is going to be contested in a higher court, that the charges do not stand to evidence. That's number one thing. And the second point that is to be contested on the humanitarian grounds, which is where the government comes into the whole scene, is that being an Indian couple, they are behind bars, they are being detained while the trial and the appeal is going on. That is not correct. If they were a Norwegian people, they would not be behind in detention or in custody. They would be out and about and with their child. The social services gave a clean chit to the parents after keeping the children for 8 weeks with them, 6 weeks for themselves and 2 weeks for police interrogation, gave the elder child back. The younger child stayed with the parents even in this whole process. Therefore, they have believed that the parents are not really a bad parents. They needed help which they were trying to get from the school and they did not receive. So this is where the whole government and the humanitarian ground comes into play. Social services wanted, and this is where the government can play an important role by getting the couple out of the jail and do what social services really wanted for the parents and children united, so that the elder child can get a better environment to grow. I'm
going to leave it over there. Lavina Tanan for joining us from Oslo on the show. Thank you very much. I want to go across to Vijayawada. From there, we've got Dr. Kalyan Chakraborty. He's a child psychiatrist. He's here because he's the one who's actually counseling the first child. Dr. Chakraborty, can you explain to our viewers why did Anupama and Chandrasekhar bring this child to you in the first place? What was the problem that you are trying to deal with? And on the basis of the facts that have been laid out in the public domain, do you think the parents are guilty, sir?
The child, first things first, how was the child brought to me? I mean, the child was brought to me even before the child was brought to me, the father was in contact with me. I mean, he sent me an email saying that, doctor, you're one of the few child psychiatrists there. We want to bring our child there and get him treated for ADHD. He was straightforward saying that it was ADHD. Why was this? Because these parents had to, I want to add something to our panelists, whatever our panelists are saying. These parents had to go through a lot of stress over the last 6 to 7 months, because this guy, Venkata Sriram, is a very hyperactive guy, moderate to severe or mild to moderate or moderate to severe hyperactivity is there. He cannot be managed by two parents. I mean, he was in my room and you cannot sit with him even for 10 minutes. He is so hyperactive and he's so restless and he is quite agitated. Now there are repeated every day, day to day, they used to have problems in the house and in and around the house. People used to point out that why don't you get this child treated or get to do something about him, because he might run on the streets, wander around in the classroom, beat up, talk in the class, beat up other kids. He can literally do anything. But when they asked for the service, that service never came them in a streamlined way. I mean, of course, the Norwegian government was showing them services like there you get the counseling, there you get, but these are things that would work out over a period of time because they were not Norwegian citizens. They are Indian citizens at the end of the day. So there is a wait list for them. And in the wait list, normally attention deficit disorder can be usually managed. This is what all viewers and everybody should remember, that it can be managed by medication and behavioral therapy. Now, these people have suggested that why don't you give behavioral therapy for the child or counseling for the child. Now, in a Norwegian country, where the English is not the mother tongue of the people there, and we cannot properly understand the way they are communicating, especially to Venkat Sriram, the child in question here, who is a premature delivery child. Remember that he was born before the completion of 9 months. His language skills and speech skills are not good, even in Telugu, his mother tongue. So how in the world can he understand English language spoken by a Norwegian through a translator expressing the situation, and by way of which the questionnaires have been filled up? So that's why the counseling part never worked for this boy. They tried to counsel.
Those are very, very important facts you've laid out. I'm coming back to you, sir. You've laid out very important facts. The most critical, of course, is the need for the child to be with the parents at this time. Now, the parents are going to be in jail for about 1.5 years, Dr. Balan, and you've got the child now pretty much left to fend for himself with his relatives. Is it not more important for a child who's suffering from hyperactivity, restlessness, to be with his parents so that he can work with him?
Absolutely. But then, so we have to help the family and the child. So this is the family trying to, maybe the parents are crying out for help.
But they've been sent to jail, and you said what happened was right.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is, yes, they have been sent to jail because this is physical abuse. If they prove the fact that this child was beaten up and with a hot spoon, and every child with ADHD, you cannot go out and saying that this is the way to bring up a child. If he's hyperactive, that you whack the child. That your society should evolve in such a way that these children and their parents have more help, so they're able to handle the situation. But if you go around saying that if the child is hyperactive, the only mothers or the fathers crying for help is a whack, we can't say that.
Dr. Baka, is it not important at this crucial age for the child to be with his parents instead of for the parents to be in jail?
Just few points in chronological order. A child with ADHD who's hyperactive, whether he is moderate to severe or severe hyperactive disorder, actually is a child with special needs. The last thing which you should do to such children is physical, psychological or mental abuse. Any amount of stress, even if it is non-physical, is a stress for a child. Now, if language is a barrier, counseling is a barrier, if culture is a barrier, I think the parents should have had better counseling sense to shift a child to a home environment, which probably would be India. If you have chosen voluntarily to stay in an environment in which you're finding it difficult, then the parents are as much responsible as anything else. I don't think it's a legal issue to blame or the Indian government to blame. I would like to reiterate again, if a child has severe ADHD, if he requires counseling, then he must be in an environment which is conducive to give that to him. Or a child, if he is that severe, if it needs institutionalization, that means he needs special care 24 hours, then those sort of facilities are available worldwide. But if you hit a child or threaten a child or psychologically stress a child, it's only going to worsen the situation.
I want to go across now once again to Norway. We're joined by Anuru Bhattacharya. He came into the news. It was his child that really led to that major storm, and now we're seeing this very ugly custody battle taking place because the child's been sent back after the MEA stepped in and a major fuss was created. But it would seem from the second case as well with Venkat Sriram that maybe Indian parents are out of line in the way that they deal with children. They believe that they're doing what is right, but they don't understand the whole complexity of the condition the child suffers from, and therefore act in a way which exacerbates the situation.
Yeah, to speak about here, things are pretty straightforward and tough as well. It's very difficult to understand for an outsider to come and groove into it straight away. But our case was more than which was talked in the media. There were some severe issues which was not highlighted. It was a cultural thing, okay, but there was some difficulties within our family as well, and especially if you go through the documents, it was the purely case where the mother had some severe problems in dealing with the child. Not only problems, she had severe psychological problems. She was on medication, and she needed help. And the worst thing was the child was suffering, and nobody has talked about the first 14 months of our care of the situation which was prevailing when Abhigyan grew up with the maternal grandparents and with the mother. Uh, uh, they came here in Norway, their parents and Sagarika and Norway immediately understood where the problem was, because the child was constantly rejecting the mother and the grandparents where they was there for 14 months. So there was severe neglect, and that neglect led to attachment disorder. Nobody in India knows what attachment disorder is, or nobody speaks about it. Attachment disorder occurs due to severe neglect in childhood, which was prominent with the mother because the child rejected the mother always. So this is the issue which we should be discussing about, rather than not demonizing somebody or just to take and give the custody to the mother. Well, parents are there as natural caregivers. In Norway, it is taken as like that the state takes care of the children, and the parents are only the caregivers.
Okay.
And when there is some,
there's so many
some
complexities involved, Dr. Bagai, that this needs to be handled more from a medical perspective than from a legal perspective.
I think the first thing important to realize is that child rights in India are very often not recognized in its truest form. Internationally, child rights have very, very strict rules and regulations as to do's and don'ts for a child. Point number two is, this is a child with special needs. He requires either behavioral therapy, medical therapy, or institutional therapy. Now, if parents really are finding it difficult in a foreign land, then they need to think of relocating. Put your own profession behind and look after the child first.
That's a very important point you make, Mr. Kher. I want to bring you in before I end this show. Given the fact that, there's behavioral therapy which is required, the child suffers from a medical condition which requires constant attention, this is far more a medical case than it is a legal case. Little purpose is sent by sending the parents to jail for a year and a half. This needs to be dealt with medically.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. What is the Rahul? I have lost half the debate.
Okay, the question, Mr. Kher, is about the fact that all the people we've been speaking to say that this is a case that requires medical attention, and therefore probably the approach is wrong when you're dealing with it legally as opposed to dealing with the case more from a medical perspective.
With all due respect to everybody, I think there is a way, either you can make a discussion into a drawing room conversation, or you can make a conversation or a debate into somewhere where you do not have necessarily speak on a scientific manner. I know the respective people are doing their job, but I look at it a completely different point of view. I think the maximum amount of old people's homes are in outside countries and not in India. I think we still at the age of, even if we get beaten up or bashed, we look after our parents much more than any other country. So I think there must be something coming out of a kind of treatment that our parents, which technically the other panelists think is not done, where we do look after our parents, we do take care of them. Whereas at the age of 13, 14, there is a major difference between parents and children abroad and in Europe, in America, and there are much more old people's homes. So what is the right way of not to be technically wrong in scolding the children or treating them as adults and later on end up in an old people's home or having no relationship, or getting a scolding by their parents in India and yet being looked after for a long, long time?
You've made some very important points. There are no clear and easy answers. Everyone needs to look within, introspect, and determine for themselves what is the best way forward. Our guests for having joined us on the show this evening. Thank you very much.